Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. I cannot believe it is 2018, and this is my first project for 2018. And I didn't really know what I was doing when I first started, but I knew that I wanted to use all of these art pebbles because I have a ton of the larger ones. I always tend to use the smaller ones, and I just knew that I wanted to use them up. So I have a Prima watercolor panel, and it is a 4x6, and I'm taking the Prima art pebbles and just kind of arranging them in a sort of a pattern, I guess. All right, so I'm going to add a couple coats of white gesso, heavy gesso from Prima, and I let it dry in between coats. And then after that dried, I added a coat of white Crackle paste, and then I let that dry completely before moving on to the next step. I am wrapping the panel with some 20 gauge wire. I believe this is some jewelry wire. I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but I'm sure you can find some at Michael's or the craft store or even on Amazon. Now I am just wrapping some twine or some thread around the panel as well. This is just going to add to the different textures in the end result. I am going to cover everything up with gesso, but because the wire is metal and then the thread is obviously fabric, it creates a different look in the end, and it just adds interest to the project. I did glue the thread and the wire to the back of the panel. And then you're going to see here I have a ton of little metal pieces and different little embellishments that I'm going to add to almost every single one of the pebbles. And it is a new year, and I am going to really try to use my stash. And I have tons of little jars and things where I have like random things in. I have one with a bunch of metal pieces that when I open up a package, I've talked about this before, but when I open up a package and then, the package either falls apart or there's like one or two pieces left, I don't want to put it back in the bulky package. So I'll just add it to the jar, and it is a large mason jar and it is full, and I try to use it every chance that I get, but I have like a flower box with a ton of random flowers in it, and then another jar with wood pieces. So I'm really going to try to use all of those up before reaching for new packages and buying new things, obviously, because I am going to try to use my stash. So I got most of the pieces, most of the embellishments from that jar, and I am going to add gesso to it. And I do add a few coats of gesso, and again, I don't want to bore you with adding gesso. I'm sure you can do this, and it doesn't really need that much explanation. I do have one little quick tip. If you are working with metals or something that is brightly colored and it's a little stubborn to get all of that gesso on and cover up that color, what I like to do is use my heat tool as I'm putting on the gesso. And I have talked about this before, and I've done it tons of times. And what it does is it makes the gesso tacky so that it adheres to the metal or whatever surface you're trying to put the gesso on a little bit better, because it makes it a little bit thicker. And I just find that it helps kind of speed up the process a little bit, especially when you're working with dark metals or something that's like bright red or something like that where you're going to need to cover it up. And so yeah, so use your heat tool and get that gesso a little bit tacky while you're trying to cover up all of the embellishments or anything. All right, so next thing is I am adding some soft teal color bloom spray. And in the end, this color really doesn't come into play because I changed my mind. I ended up using some Ken Oliver Colorburst powders, and the Dragonfly Blue might show up just a little bit, but I think for the most part, the color that shows up is the Ken Oliver Colorburst powder. So I just wanted to show this just because I had put it on there, and I think it did help spread out the powders in the end. But yeah, I don't know. I just decided just to leave this because I think you guys appreciate it when I leave this kind of thing. So I take the nozzle off of the bottle and then add the color that way. It just helps control it a little bit better, and you can add a little where you want instead of having to worry about overspray or spraying somewhere where you don't want it to, and then again you just have a little bit more control. And this color is the Dragonfly Blue, which is probably one of my favorites. And I think now I'm going to go in with the Colorburst powder. And this color is Turquoise, which I used in my last video, well, my layout that I created. And I just love this color. It's hard to tell right now, but these little this powder is just amazing. And I have said it before, it's just, even though it's messy, I am loving these powders so much. So you saw there, after I added the water, it just kind of brought all of that color and that powder just to life, and it just is, it's beautiful. I don't know how to explain it. And I think I love it even more because there's no shimmer to it. I have said this before, that I'm not that much into the shimmer and you know, like glittery stuff or anything like that. So when the colors are matte and the color is very vibrant, I just love it. So the Ken Oliver Colorburst powder is beginning to be some of my favorite colors to use. So I went in and I added a little bit more of that soft teal on the top of all of the embellishments, just so that it gave it a little bit of color. And then I'm going back in with some more of that the powder, just to kind of make the color a little bit more intense in all of the textures and all of the layers of the project. All right, now I basically let it dry completely. I think it's still a tad wet in some places, but for this technique you want it to be pretty dry, or else you're just going to be moving the color around, and unless that's the look you're going for, then you're definitely going to want to let it dry. And the technique that I shared before with using the heat tool as you're putting the gesso on works wonders when you're doing this technique, when you're trying to highlight all of those textures and different embellishments on your project. So because the Ken Oliver Colorburst powder is very dark and very pigmented, and then now I'm adding the white to the top of the canvas, basically, it creates a lot of depth to the project, and I love doing that for my projects. I think it just makes them, I guess, stand out and just have more interest to them when there's a lot of depth to them. I can't even talk. All right, so you saw there I am kind of just basically drying the gesso on my paintbrush to get it really tacky, because I really want all of basically the top layer of my canvas to be white. And it's hard to tell in the video and even in the pictures a little bit that the canvas on the top is pretty white. And so that's what I was trying to go for, was just lots of highlights on top and then a lot of the darker color on the bottom and the back of the canvas. You can see here, love all of that texture, and it turned out better than I could have imagined, because when I started the canvas I really didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to use the pebbles. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Leave me a comment down below, and here is a couple videos you might enjoy, and I will catch you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye!